Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Kelly, the Regional Coordinator for the Society of Biblical Literature's Pacific Coast region. And this is another installment of 7 Good Minutes, Meet Our Scholars. We think we've got some of the best folks doing biblical studies right out here in the Pacific Coast region. And this is a chance just for us to introduce some of our established and emerging scholars that we have here in the Pacific Coast. So I'm really excited today to have my friend and former grad school classmate
That's
from our
right.
days back at Emory University, Dr. Julia Fogg from California Lutheran University. So Julia, thanks for doing this. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. It's so good to see you.
Likewise. All right, 7 good minutes. Here we go.
Okay.
Question number 1. I mentioned Cal Lutheran a moment ago.
Uh-huh.
How long have you been there, and what all do you do in your post there?
I started at Cal Lutheran in 2003, so I'm in my 18th year, oh my God, at Cal Lutheran. I started in the religion department as their incoming New Testament scholar, and we have about 8 religion scholars in the department. I chaired that department for about 7 years in the middle, and what do? I teach Greek, I teach liberation theology, I teach Jesus in global contexts, I teach New Testament courses, I have occasionally taught things like Islam, and yeah, that about covers it.
So,
Pauline letters, some other good things.
New Testament stuff and more.
Yeah,
I
and
like it.
more.
All right. Question number 2, speaking of all of that, what do you work on in your scholarship? Just sort of generally speaking.
Yeah, generally speaking, the last 5-7 years I've been working on immigration and themes of border crossing. So what I do is I look at New Testament stories of border crossing and link or interweave those stories with contemporary stories of border crossing. So that's one area. All of this is coming out of a hermeneutic of contextuality. So I've been talking, I work a lot with students on immersive learning. I take them into the community, get them involved with homelessness or another service project, or on the farms, or immigration, or all sorts of things. And then ask them to read the New Testament writings from the perspective of the community that they've been immersed in. So my own research sort of parallels that work and says, okay, how does the scripture sound different when we read it from a particular community's perspective?
Okay, great. Well, the third question is kind of a follow-up to that, and I think I know
Okay.
the answer already. Is there a specific project that you've kind of been excited about lately or been working on lately?
Yeah, so all of that work from the teaching and the research, and then also a lot of church work that I've done in a bilingual church community out in Pasadena. A lot of preaching and other things resulted in a book that came out with Baker Brassos Press last spring in April, Finding Jesus at the Border, Opening Our Hearts to the Stories of Our Immigrant Neighbors. And basically, I went into detention centers, I went to the border, I talked with and worked closely with DACA students and dreamers. I accompanied pastors in a local setting who were accompanied them to their ICE meetings, and then, through their deportation proceedings. So basically a lot of activist kind of work on behalf of the accompanying immigrant communities. And then thinking about that in terms of border crossing and what that means for the Christian church. So how does hearing the stories of our neighbors and walking with them challenge us as Christians to really claim what Jesus says and does as border crossing to love our neighbor?
Great. Well, this is again related, but I think question number 4, you've already spoken to this a little bit, but so what, if anything, do you find exciting or maybe challenging about doing biblical studies in this particular context of the Pacific Coast region, or maybe in your case, California?
Yeah, I grew up on the East Coast, as you mentioned. We went to school together in Atlanta. I had never really been to California. did not know what was going on here in Southern California. So coming here really opened up a lot of learning for me. I'm bilingual, I speak Spanish and English, but immersing myself in immigrant communities in California with the history of California, from Native Americans to Mexicans, the Spanish, that whole history was so rich, and I knew so very little about it. So coming into the heart of Chicano studies outside of LA and other, getting in touch with other communities, and especially in the farming communities, the Red Bandana Project, other things, has been very motivating, and really exciting, and has actually changed how I think about what I do. Yeah.
Wow. Well, last question, and it's a tough one a bit.
Okay.
These are obviously challenging times with the
Yeah.
COVID-19 pandemic and racial and social injustice and Black Lives Matter and more. Any thoughts on being a biblical scholar in this time and this context?
Yeah. Um, for me as a biblical scholar, theology has always been important. And, you know, I was always aware that I do theology differently than theologians, because I do it out of a biblical context, more groundedly with our background, than many folks do, in traditional theological studies. And I'm also a liberation theologian. So the times that we're in, are obviously focusing us on race analysis, our own privilege as white folk, how we bring that into the classroom, how we bring that into our scholarship. But this week I found myself meeting with a student, and saying, well, actually Schussler Fiorenza takes, records hermeneutic of suspicion, and she applies it in this way. And as a Latinx gay man, that really opened things up for him, right? And so I think that there are many resources that we have in biblical studies that we can offer to the world right now. And I think that our biblical scholars of color and scholars from the margins who have done the work that they have done, we can amplify their voices and help our students to learn that there is a variety of perspectives coming out of the Bible and readings of the Bible, and Christian tradition, that are accessible and that have something prophetic to say to this time.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you doing this. And everybody, that's 7 good minutes with Dr. Julia Fogg. We'll catch you next time.